So hold on.
introduce you-
How's my hair? How are we doing? Is this starting?
Yeah, this is
The show just
officially.
started.
Yeah.
Okay, what is the name of the show, man?
I don't know. We call it Prismic Studio.
Prismic Studio.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's Prismic. Sounds like space and light and just like colors.
Light, yeah, colors. We like colors.
Yeah, and is that part of your brand and like how you communicate about your product?
Yeah, we like to be colorful.
Colorful.
Yeah.
And in
It's
what
interesting.
way? How do you? How does that?
Mixed with the product, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, the whole idea started with saying like, we manage content, right?
Yeah.
And content is colorful. There's so many things inside.
It's diverse. There's
Yeah.
so many millions of shades.
Yeah,
of,
right.
how the
And
content is.
then you get them into the prism, and then you distribute them again in all the kind of directions. That's
Yeah.
the whole thing. It's colorful.
I love that. I love that idea because I suppose like you have a ton of different users creating different content and with diverse types of audiences too.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's from the logo, the name, everything came from.
I love that. Yeah, and it's
And earlier we were talking about something which is a bit different, but we're talking about design tools, which is a topic that is a bit related to what our users do as well.
yeah. So Prismic, it's a CMS.
It's a CMS.
CMS and I suppose the people that use it are designers and developers.
Yeah,
and-
between designers and developers. So basically, it's a CMS that doesn't do the front end for you. Basically, it gives you an
I see.
API, and then you get everything, and you use the framework you want to kind of do the front end part.
That's pretty cool. It just gives you that power, that raw power.
Yeah.
And you can do with it
Whatever you want.
Whatever
with
you
it.
want.
Exactly.
That's which is very different from others that are like they give you the tools and everything is there, but it can be limiting.
Exactly.
in what
Like
you can
for
do
instance,
with
drag
it.
and
Right?
drop tools. You
Yeah.
can build a website, but you don't have all your creativity. So that's why.
Yeah, I see. And also sometimes they can become bloated with features that you might not need too, right?
That's a hard one. That's a hard thing of doing a product, is to make a product that doesn't get bloated, because the whole experience degrades. But still, these tools, drag and drop tools for building websites, they are good for a lot of cases where you don't have the time, you don't have developers, you want just to get something done very quickly. They might provide you with something basic, good looking, and serve your business. So
Yeah, it just opens the possibilities for so many people, right?
Right.
There's,
exactly.
some-
So it's-
and so, but someone could create that tool on top of Prismic, right?
probably, yeah.
Yeah, could use Prismic as the back end, all the content
And do some
management.
kind of themes and other
Yeah.
things, so that the community can choose from them, so they don't have to develop them themselves.
The community. We're talking about the community. What is that community? Who is that? Who is in that community of Prismic?
You mean, well, they're mostly between developers and designers. So
Yeah.
some of them are like, for instance, one of the agencies that like they call it digital agency,
Yeah.
that use our product. They are basically designers and front end developers.
Yeah.
So they pretty much represent our users, our audience, that are willing to learn JavaScript, HTML, CSS, but they still do good design.
Yeah, I see. And I see. So most of the engineers that are using Prismic are front end developers because
Yeah.
I see, of course, because they probably don't want to deal too much with the back end. And okay,
That's
cool.
the kind of, for them, their focus is that let's build this website that looks good. The publishing tools, they're interesting for others, not for them, not for what they're trying to achieve. So we kind of abstract that work for them so that they can focus on what they're building.
That's pretty cool, man. I like that. And I suppose the community is just. Are there any controversies in the community? Did they ever fight about
Of course,
stuff?
I mean, they have. So one of the things, since you are providing a community of, a product for any kind of technology, then one of the topics is like which framework I should be using. Like, and there's plenty of frameworks there.
There are
right?
framework wars.
Like, component frameworks, React, Vue, all of these kind of things. And, sometimes you can, for your case, you can find one better than the others. sometimes they overlap. They do the same thing, and then people get religious about frameworks. So certainly
right.
These kind of things.
I feel like that's something that also happens in the design space. People can get really attached to a design tool, and then they want to solve everything with a design tool, and I feel like it's not very healthy to get too attached to a tool.
I think so. Like for instance, our designer Anthony, he's very much attached to Sketch.
Yeah.
And we're trying to think, hey, can you try Figma or something else? And he wouldn't. Whereas Renaud, he's the UX designer, he's very happy to try something else. And it's maybe not better than Sketch or some other tool also, but I guess trying things out, at least you know that they're better or not.
Yeah, and sometimes some tools do better a specific thing than others, and so it's good to have a good knowledge of different tools. That way, if you have a different problem, you're not always trying to solve it with the same tool. You're not always, because if you only have a hammer, everything is a nail, right?
Exactly.
But if you have a diverse set of tools, then you start realizing that finessing this part of a problem or something that I want to do, I'm going to use this tool, and for this part I'm going to use this other one.
But see, the same thing exists in design tools, and it exists as well in frameworks.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
It's always about that, and I always been like, I like this kind of trying to find the right tool for the job, but then still you can say that people, when they have habits with a tool, they get more productive, and maybe that's why they prefer to use the same tool, so that they have that kind of productivity that allows them to go quicker.
And that's a reality. And sometimes when you have a limited budget, a limited time, and there's no space for you to try different things and new things. That's the idea, right? That's the mentality of someone that doesn't want to try. And it's like, no, I'm already productive this way. But I feel like we should all give ourselves that opportunity, that space to just.
I think so, and that's part of. I feel that in companies, they try to kind of there's more and more this kind of culture to give employees time to kind of go test things.
Yeah.
But they kind of suppose that employees will go home and start testing things and get back with this knowledge, whereas education is part of your job, actually.
You're right. Yeah, and sometimes I suppose education is also learning things that are not just in your field or not just in that small universe. You sometimes you want to branch out, because then you start realizing, once you start for example, I started reading about behavioral economics, which for a designer that sounds like, no, why are you?
Well, you have to introduce it. What is it now? Now you talk about it. So
we can behavioral economics is kind of a new newish, but I don't know what to call it, like a field in economics that it's all about that mixes a little bit of economics and psychology.
Yeah.
And
so sociology or psychology?
Well, I think a little bit of both.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you go to Wikipedia, I think they will say psychology. Yeah, and just how we make decisions when we are going to how our psychology plays a big role when we make decisions, and make decisions, economic decisions, or decisions about our life and about how we want to improve the world, and how sometimes behavioral economics says that we are a little bit irrational when we make choices, and so irrational,
yeah.
Yes, and we are incapable of making decisions that are the best for us.
Do you recommend the book?
There are a couple of books. So I don't know if you do this, but I wish potentially it's a thing for behavioral economics. But I'm reading two books at the same time, and sometimes I read one. And when I say read, I mean listening on Audible. But I'm listening to two books at the same time. One is Predictably Irrational.
Oh, I have that book, the orange one, blue or something.
Yeah, that has two colors.
And I never read it. It's on the shelf.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way for for behavioral economics to explain how we value those things because we just own them. Anyway, that's
and
one.
the other book.
And the other one is, oh man, I forgot. Misbehaving.
I don't know. Yeah.
And it's also about it's more about the history of behavioral economics. So I was reading that and I was like about the history of this, and then you get a recommendation of other book. I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go read that one too.
I really like this kind of thing, and something that you can find with books. And reading two books, sometimes even topics that are not exactly connected. Like I was talking about reading a book about how the brain works, and another about something completely different is about networks.
Yeah,
networks. How network function, and architecture of networks, components, all these kind of things.
Yeah.
Economics of networks, basically.
Yeah.
And then you start mixing up the ideas, and it gets very interesting because you can okay, that works with this. And in conferences, that's why I like also conferences that have a broad range of topics. You go to one conference to the other, and then you go to discussions, and then it talks about everything, but connecting all the dots. It's really interesting.
And that's what I was trying to say about when you want to learn, you want to branch out of that little universe, because that there's a connection of everything, and there's you learning a different topic. Then you for me made design richer, and even I want to try new things in design where potentially you can apply behavioral economics into it. So I don't know. I can see, like, if you start reading about physics or mathematics, then you can potentially also apply for how light works and color works, and then it also affects your designs too.
All material design comes from inspirations of how physics works.
Yeah, and
there were this kind of period where we thought like, hey, like we're on the computer, we don't need shadows, we don't know these other things, and you had all the flat design movement, and then like things started behaving not in a predictable way. You click on the button and it behaves something like you never experienced before, and you said, maybe physics, we should get back to physics because they're habits, and we can use these habits to make things that people can understand, so that we don't need education. And that we got back physics with material design, don't you think?
Correct. Yeah, I think material design is like that semi-flat design, right? Where it still brings some things that we are used to and we're familiar with. Like you're saying, like light. We see, like, we have a sun that has been forever on top of us and just bringing light from above. So we're used to seeing light always coming from above and creating a shadow below. So when you apply those principles to a design, then in our brain, that it has to be it could be just like a soft shadow below your shape and potentially just a little light or a glimpse of light on top. Then our brains see volume in it. Even if it's flat, we see a little bit of volume, and we see like there's some elevation, and on these, like how these pixels are just forming that, making that connection with our brain, and our brain is just like feeling like, oh, okay, this is a little bit closer to me. It has a little bit of depth. It's a little bit like, again, there has an elevation, even though it's flat, but our brain thinks it that way, and now it makes it more clickable or more affordable. The affordance of the button is bigger. So
we can always like try to see in other, branch out, as you say, and get metaphors or things from other places and apply them.
It applies to everything, and a lot of the things that in design you want to. So you don't want to go to the other side where it's skeuomorphic, if I say it right, where it mimics nature too much, and then it just like it's gimmicky, right?
It's heavy.
I don't know.
And it has too much details probably for a user interface.
Correct. And sometimes it can be distracting, it can be too heavy, it can be potentially not even the experience might not be as great because there's too much stuff. I don't know.
Too much details, I guess.
Too many details, yeah. And I feel like trends sometimes can be healthy and sometimes can be also if you just follow the trends because like everyone is doing it, then you're not really looking at the problem and you're just like trying to solve it again with the same tool, like going with a design trend is kind of like also like making your mind only focus on one solution to a problem.
It's more like, I guess we get this kind of, at some point, a new concept, and then we keep digging into it, optimizing it. It's more like we optimize one solution. We optimize until like it's very optimized. But at some point you need to get it like out of the box and say like, maybe the whole thing is wrong altogether. Maybe there is some new inspiration that can get us to somewhere where we have more space.
Yeah.
And space means like we can solve more problems than what we thought we can solve back then.
But that sounds scary, though. For a lot of people, that sounds like, no, hold on, no, we have a thing that works. We don't want, like, let's explore a little bit, but not too much, because then the thing that works is, we don't want to break that.
Right.
You know?
There are a lot of projects that failed that way. And one of them that I always remember reading about is that this operating system that, honestly, I forgot who did it, and
Windows is one of those.
Yeah, but it's not that one. It functions not by structure, not by categorical structure, but if you're looking for something, you can relate to what happened in the same moment when you were doing that thing, and that's how you can find it. So basically connecting memories.
Okay.
So the way like you would like, I don't know, forget where your shirt was, and you said like, when was the last time I used it? It was in that room.
Yeah.
Or it was when I was walking in the street, and then you connect it to another memory, and then you will find it. So basically it's like search, but search like more time oriented instead of like structure or category oriented. But they failed. I mean, it's not the thing. We know that it's not the thing. We don't use it today.
But it kind of makes sense. So, like, if I were to, I don't know, like I grab my coffee cup, and I go over there and I start like drawing somewhere else, like making a doodle, and while I'm drinking my coffee, and then I leave, and then I want to grab where's my coffee cup? Where I was, I'm not going to go back to the kitchen. Probably, potentially, the first place where I go look is going to be there. It's like, oh, no, hold on, I was using it, and it's over there. So that's kind of the thinking here.
Yeah, the kind of thing.
Where it's like files get structured in a way where, because they're connected, they were working together.
Exactly. So you were working on a file or like some kind of, let's say, project.
Yeah.
And that project, it was for that kind of particular client. But the project name is not that client, but you did that together at the same time. You say, okay, that client, and then it will get everything that happened around that client in the same kind of time, and then you go through these files and say it's a design file, and then like you get even a smaller set, and they say, okay, that one I'm looking for.
I can even see how like files are not really duplicated, but they can be part of different projects.
Everything,
right?
yeah.
Like one single file that is I don't know, like a typeface, and this typeface is being used in different projects, so it's not this typeface is just saved in this folder. It's actually
everywhere. It's related to everything.
Everywhere to wherever it's being used and wherever it's being applied.
Yeah,
that is beautiful, man.
It
sounds so complex, though.
Yeah, how do you get people to understand it? Education will be hard, maybe there.
Well,
or the user
that
interface.
I don't think we will be capable of using something like that. I don't think we have the brain power to actually understand those networks, to understand, because we want everything to be linear, to be like in squares. That's our way of like simplifying things that are so complex. Is our way of making it easier for us to understand.
I'm not so sure. I think we're pushing on that structure because it was successful. But brains work actually that way. Brains are complex. The way brains work, they are complex.
They are, but that doesn't mean our brains understand themselves. I don't think the brain works in a complex way, but but it doesn't understands the things in a, I don't know, man.
I don't know.
I don't think the brain understands itself.
Someone to have to experiment with it. Like, you get in the morning, you wake up in the morning, and then something happens for you, like, I don't know, an experiment, some experience, like, I don't know, so you hear a child crying.
That would be scary. Yeah. Okay. So you wake up and there's a child crying.
No, and the neighbors or something. Or let me get another one. Like you open TV and you see they're talking about insurance, right? And they say, oh, maybe I thought I should contact my insurance. I had to talk to them about that kind of thing that is still hanging. Your brain did it for you. You never thought. It's the experience that brought it to you, right?
Yeah.
That little news that was unrelated. No one, like, it was this, but just you recognized it because you had a task pending there that you needed to do, and it reminded you of that task.
Yeah.
And you gave importance to it because it was important for you.
Yeah.
So that's your brain works every day that way. So the operating system might work that way if we succeed in connecting it. Now that connection is the tricky part, probably.
Yeah. I'm not saying that the brain, that we as humans work that way. We work in a very chaotic way. I can see that in a way that things that are not related, like suddenly we make a connection in our heads, and then it reminds us of something else, and then we remember like, oh, I had a meeting. Oh, what the hell, or I had to send that. What I'm saying is that doesn't mean that we actually can rationalize that thinking.
Maybe we should not rationalize it.
Yes, we should not. It's just like there are different things, and when the thing is that when we try to rationalize, when we try to understand it, that's when we start putting things into boxes. That's when we start like trying to align everything and just like, okay, create a network where it makes sense when we see it. But if we actually saw how it actually works, where all the connections are like this, we would be super scared. We're like, I cannot understand this.
Of course.
But that's how it works, though. Like nature, that's how it works too. It's just
like here's an exercise that I do every day, and that might be crazy, but when we're talking about a topic with someone, okay, it's a complex topic, we need to find a solution, and then we talk, we discuss, and I tell, okay, enough talking here. I'm going to think of something else, and I work with something else, and I let my background brain, just process these, and at some point, it triggers a notification. Hey, I have a solution for that problem that you're not thinking of right now. And I think, if you relax, I feel that there's this conscious brain that rationalizes things. But if you distract it, if you get it away, then the other brain will be able to process so much faster, so in a more complex way than that rational brain. And you should give it its chance, probably.
Yeah, because when you're saying like in this scenario where you're talking probably in a meeting room where there's only 1 hour and you have to brainstorm, you have to come up with ideas, like those ideas are usually just like things that are just like really available to us. So we go to our biases, we go to the stereotypes, we go to the things that are cultural references, and instead of like opening up and suddenly we just like come up with ideas that are just in this mindset that we have, because because in the moment we are so limited to the amount of things that we can do that we only come up with those ideas. But that's a reality, and that's why you want in a group to have people that are diverse, from different backgrounds, from different from different countries and with different cultures, because we are so limited to the things that we can think, that if you get a lot of people that have squares that are different colors, then suddenly that's when the magic happens, right? Because you're limited to this thing. I don't know about all the things that exist in the world, but when someone else has a different, like another part of the puzzle, then like solutions that are more interesting start coming up. But when you have a group of people, and sorry, now we're talking about diversity.
Yeah, diversity. And you did a great thing. I saw we were browsing that Humaaans.
Oh yeah,
it's all diversity, right?
Yeah, I love how this interview is just like going everywhere. I mean, if there's a testament of like what we're talking right now is this interview. We're just like talking about this and then another thing. But sorry, let me just finish my thought.
Okay, go ahead.
I think that's when you get like very interesting ideas, because if you have a lot of people that have the same background, they have the same potentially same cultural references, then potentially they will move faster because they all agree. they all agree. They have this square that is just like this point, like they only see this. And when you talk to someone else that only sees that too, it's like, oh, we're connected. This is good. Cool. Let's just ship it, you know? And that's great. That actually works great for a lot of companies that just want to move fast. But innovation really comes from people that start putting pieces of that puzzle together. So if you really want innovation in a team, in a product, you want to have a diverse team. Because there's going to be conflict. There's going to be like, hey, I only see this part. You're telling me about this other thing that I don't understand, but let's discuss it. Let's talk it. And it's like suddenly, oh man, you start seeing other shades, other colors, other solutions for that problem. And that's when I think the real magic happens.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. That's and in that complexity of connecting different experiences, right?
Yeah, and it's all because as humans, we are limited to the amount of information
the experience that we got.
And when we are talking, we can only talk about the things that we remember, the things that are close to us, and
to what the environment is provoking to us.
Yeah.
We're very limited. Like if there is a light, it's blue, it might give us some very particular memories. And blue can mean something else for the others, and then it will provoke other memories. And we're very much conditioned to the environment we are in.
Yeah, and I think sometimes the problems that we have with diversity in tech, I want to think, and that they're not really coming out of malice, that they're really just, again, because we are inefficient in the way we think and that we rationalize things, and sometimes we just want to move fast, and to do that sometimes we just like we only contemplate the people that think like us because that's easy, and so
or it sounds right,
and it sounds right, yes, and suddenly you just want to get the ball rolling. So but it's not really because you hate all kinds of people. That's me trying to be very positive and optimistic about the human race.
I guess one very efficient mechanism that happened in evolution is categorization. Being able to understand that lion is different and is dangerous and that other animal looks like me and we can act together was very essential, and that's why it got very powerful. Now, we might need it much less nowadays in humanity, but it's still a major mechanism that evolution gave us, I guess.
Yeah. And you're saying like meeting with the people that we connect with.
Yeah,
and,
they look like
making
us.
alliances.
Because we like to kind of, that's the mechanism that evolution gave us to survive just, until today.
Yeah.
We might not need it anymore, but still it's there.
Yeah, like I think sometimes we just gotta fight those primal instincts that we have, right? That could potentially.
So let's get less abstract here and talk.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about your Humaaans project?
The Humaaans project. So Humaaans, because it has triple A.
I saw.
Oh man, it's just that humans.com was not available, or at least it was very expensive. I don't know.
You can tell some story about why triple A, because something very sophisticated and all.
No, it's just
the domain wasn't.
The domain was not available. I think also in a lot of design tools or design websites, they use like a lot of letters. They will potentially just like use one of the letters, like dribble or awards. Yeah. And I think probably someone started a trend, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna follow that because that makes it easy for me to grab a domain. So yeah, Humaaans.
Maybe that was it for the others.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, too. And also it's an easy way to get someone else to remember you, right?
A mistake,
like,
right?
That mistake, like that, like. Put something in your brain that like makes it more memorable, and also it's better for SEO, I guess. Like because like potentially just searching for dribble with one B might give you a ton of results, but
and
with
the
triple
right results, right?
B, that will be just like anyway. Humaaans. So Humaaans is an illustration system, I guess, like a design system, but with illustrations. And it's only a design system, and it's a design file that allows you to mix and match different elements and components that can create different illustrations. And this one is on people. So combining different shirts or clothing or positions or legs or faces or hairdos. You can, even if it is a small set of elements, with the variations that you can have, then you have a ton of variations that you can create with these. So yeah, it's pretty much just a design system with illustrations.
And what I like about it is that when people use it, they automatically kind of in a way embrace diversity. You know, you kind of mix and match between these kind of faces, clothing, and all of that, and you get different kind of. So suddenly there are a lot of websites that start using this, and they look like the illustrations they use for humans. They're very, let's say, not stereotypical anymore.
Yeah, well, I would say now, like having these kind of systems, like one of the criticisms that it gets is like, oh, well, now every website is going to look the same, and I tend to agree with that criticism. It's true. Like if hopefully, my hope too is when putting this kind of design system out there is, number one, I embrace open source, and I think in design there should be a culture also of open source, because it allows putting things for free and opening up allows for us in the design community to grow and to learn from each other, and that was one of the reasons that I made it open source, and also to allow other people that are potentially starting in design or potentially are not interested or are not as skillful in illustration. Mm-hmm. They want to include that kind of craft in their design. Well, potentially they are focusing more on the UX or on the copy or on the structure and the layout of a website, but potentially don't have the skills for illustration. Allow them to also have that kind of visual language in what they're creating. So it's and I made it open because of that. And also that creates suddenly a problem, because it could be that a lot of people are using it, and suddenly like every website you go looks very similar, because potentially a lot of designers, or the same designer potentially was making a lot of websites using just the same illustrations. So but that actually
still open source, right?
Yeah,
they can modify it.
Exactly. So my hope when putting it open source is like, you can use it as it is and mix it up, but hopefully this actually inspires you to create your own system or remix it or change it. And I have seen that happening where other people use it more as a starting point, and then they add more things that are more focused on their audience, or they speak better to their brand.
Especially, it's much harder to start from scratch. When you have some kind of base, you kind of modify it and give it your style, your touch.
And potentially, it's also, again, this is all my hopes of this, is potentially inspire you to create your own system. Like you see how easy it is to create your own system, and then you're like, hey, I can create this, but with my style, or I can commission an illustrator to do this same thing for me, for a company, but with their style. So one of the criticisms of this too was like, hey, you're trying to put out of jobs illustrators, which I don't agree.
No.
Because doing open source didn't put out of jobs engineers. If anything, it just created more awareness about engineers. It made engineers grow and grow as a community and help each other. Putting out there illustrations like this is not. I'm not trying to get rid of illustrators. I'm trying to actually bring more awareness that illustration can be used in a design. Now, again, people are able to put it at least on mockups and able to put it in something that is just going to be represented to a client. And then you can tell them like, hey, if we want something that is more original, we can hire an illustrator. But first, the client, you show them the value of illustration by being able to see that mock-up where illustration was possible.
And it makes sense in their project. And then once they're convinced, then they kind of go for an illustrator.
Exactly. But it's not very obvious for a lot of people or for a client if you tell them potentially like, oh, let's add illustration.
Imagine that you add an illustration here.
You're going to be like, no. We don't do illustrations. Yeah. We're a serious company. We don't do cartoons. We want it's only until you show them, you get them to like, oh, understand, like, oh, okay, you meant this kind of illustration, or you meant this kind of how to use them this way. Okay, cool. Let's hopefully this makes those conversations a little bit less awkward and opens up the minds of other people that potentially don't understand the value of illustration. So that is, so again, that in my mind, in my world, that is actually bringing more work to illustrators. That is,
and also it helps as an educational material. Basically, if you want to start with things, you can take something already done. You see how it's broken into pieces, how it's designed, and you can play with it, and then Control Z, and then you change again, and it's very useful to play with something already done to see like what's the complexity of a good looking illustration, right?
Yeah.
How complex it is. Is it inaccessible for me? Can I ever be able to do that? And then you'll get that kind of connection of like, it's possible, it's feasible.
Exactly. That's also what I meant with inspiring other people. What you're saying of educating them that this is educate. That sounds very condescending. No, what I mean is other people see the possibilities.
Helping them to learn.
Yeah, to learn that it's potentially not as hard. And I can tell you that. I know it sounds pretentious, but I made that system in a weekend, and it looked so rich because of all the combinations that you can make with it. But with a small set of components,
I guess the simplicity of it made it like look so huge because you can combine things. But
exactly,
still it's very simple.
So with those kind of projects, that's actually the third illustration library that I made. I had made one that is called avatars, and it was just faces of people, and then you can change their expressions and their mouths and their hair, but it was just this, and always looking to the front. So that also like. Then after that, I made one that was just robots. That was more of a fun thing for me to do, and just like I wanted to like experiment. Like, can you make robots that you can expand them and responsive robots? And then I landed with humans.
Do you still make others? Will you make others?
Yeah. So I'm working in one that is actually all hand drawn. It's an also illustration system, but it's the humans, it's all vector, and it's all just done with like a couple
shapes.
With shapes, very simple shapes, and just like putting it on top of them. This one that I'm working on is a little more organic, whatever that means, but it feels more like hand drawn. It's still vector, and so you can still export it to SVG or potentially like move elements and animate them if you want to, but the style is more organic. Yeah, and I'm working on that one. I don't know. Probably it's just going to be Humans 2.0 or something. I don't know, like another version of Humans. Just I suppose just to keep the marketing there. That's instead of a new product. No. Yeah, I'm working on that. Yeah.
Cool. So I would like to go and focus back on design tools.
Yeah.
But maybe in another video, so that this one.
In another episode,
yeah.
Let's talk about that. What was this episode about? About creating
space. I don't know.
about
everything.
About everything, right? I love that. I think I love that.
What did we mention there? Like.
What's that?
What did we mention there? Like, what are the topics we mentioned there? With
randomness, serendipity, surprises,
yeah.
and just like being able to chat about stuff, and two different minds working together, and hopefully bringing
Next
some
one.
entertainment to your houses.
Okay.